Hi, everybody. This is day 1648. Let's see if everything's working. Seems to be. Make sure I'm on. Okay. Hi, everybody. What a day. We're burning the midnight oil again on day 1648 days since Richard was premeditatedly murdered in the line of duty on Fort Bliss for reporting criminal trafficking, which includes human trafficking, which includes the weapon smuggling and the ammunition smuggling, and other illegal, illicit activities that were going on Fort Bliss and El Paso, connected to the cartel, connected to his chain of command, and it's a big deal because I just posted, it can be up to $3 trillion. So people say, What? What did you just say?" The criminal trafficking in the United States is estimated to be worth 2.5 to $3 trillion. 2.5 to $3 trillion. If you don't have a faith, right? If you don't have a, a faith in, I would say, the triune God, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost, and a hope for beyond our life, right? Beyond our life, for this life, for beyond our life, for the upcoming generations, and that. If you're just a greedy, sick, perverse individual, it's very easy to get into the trafficking because the money's there. The money is really there. And if you're wondering why is President Trump cutting off funding, a lot of the funding, I can tell you after 4 years of doing this, this is big, big money. And it has compromised and risked our national security. But also our sons and daughters. Okay, and that's important. That's important. And, when you have children and you've invested the time and effort to raise them up, and then they are targeted when they become a young adult, targeted. And absolutely, our sons and daughters on Fort Bliss have become targets. The barracks SOPs, the standard operating regulations, were not followed at all. There were, and so I'm going to lay this out, how this operation organized itself in my 4 years of our family investigating what happened to our son, what we have found out, and open up a discussion for others that are there in El Paso, that are there on Fort Bliss, that have been on Fort Bliss, that are in the military, to leave comments about what I'm about to tell you, the operations, the true operations on Fort Bliss that have targeted our service members, our sons and daughters that sign up to serve in the military, and how they get targeted on Fort Bliss and why they get targeted. And I just kind of put it out there, right? You can, the criminal trafficking, is 2.5 to $3 trillion annually. That shocked me today. I thought it was hundreds of billions. But no, it's surpassed that. It's huge. And of course, that includes human trafficking and the drug trafficking and the weapons and the ammunition trafficking, supplies, child illegal videos. Yeah, it's really bad, and it's a huge business. And so for President Trump to say no, if you are a federal worker, you need to go back to work. Um, no staying at home, right? Or second job or whatever, time off. Because you see the the trap is there. The trap to compromise our federal workers, the trap to compromise our sons and daughters that sign up to serve in the military. They're the most vulnerable because they're so young, right? They're so young. And they're just wanting to be adults and they join. But it is so lucrative this and I it's so terrible. It is really satanic. It's really a suicide mission for our country to operate in these criminal trafficking rings. It's just so bad. It's going to lead to, well, it has, hasn't it? And in our case, it's led to our son's murder. Because, what's the worst sin, right? I mean, worst sin, taking another person's life is pretty bad. It's pretty up there, right? It's pretty up there. Like all the things they do to children, that's pretty up there. It is. It's really bad. And so when soldiers, when there is an organized group that want to take advantage of criminal trafficking, there's no better place to do it than on a military installation and with the help of leadership. And why do I say that? Because we as Americans, and we're such a big country, we love our country, and we have agreed to, through our government, to just about have an open purse, an open checkbook for our national defense. It is an open checkbook for our national defense. Even though we understand that there's fraud, waste, and abuse, even though we understand that President Eisenhower, when he departed from the presidency after World War II, absolutely warned us about the military industrial complex, absolutely warned us. We know about that. We know there's fraud, waste, and abuse. We know, but we have always been willing to risk the fraud, waste, and abuse, um, not even thinking that it would get so evil. At least that's how I feel. And but we knew that there was definitely, we're not, it's not, no agency, no institution is going to be perfect. So we tolerated it. At least I did. At least our family did. And we just did not even have a clue that it would get so evil. And we have provided as Americans, like I said, an open checkbook. We are at $1 trillion. We're probably over $1 trillion now a year for our national defense. There's no other country that comes close to that. It's huge. And we have a Pentagon that's absolutely out of control. They absolutely exploited our goodwill. They exploited our want for national defense to protect our Constitution, our freedoms, our way of life, and they exploited it, and our country has been going downhill. We know that. It's been going downhill compared to, I'm not that old, and I remember when I was a kid, it was much better, as far as um, humane, right? And with all this talk of equal rights and all tolerance and blah, 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 it's just, divisive, and it was not like that. It wasn't like that. They've exploited um, the opportunity to separate us one from another for whatever reason, wherever we come from, whatever. Um, and it's, uh, and so we're not better off for all the money that we have allocated, that we have agreed to, that some of it we didn't agree to, that they've exploited. And so of course, Fort Bliss is a target. And there's no better way than to get a hold of the purse strings than to get into those positions, those leadership positions. And we know that the generals that were in Richard's chain of command and part of this investigation, Michael Garrett, Donna Martin, and McConville, James McConville, Sean Bernabe, um, Patrick Matlock, James Eisenhower, Curtis Taylor. We know that they're up to no good. We absolutely know 100 Clem Coward, um, James Stewart, absolutely up to no good with NCOs, senior NCOs, right? Like Jake Jakovitz, like Jay Paulin, like Michael Roddick. Well, he's a lieutenant colonel, Michael Ruggiero. We know that they're absolutely up to no good. And then, of course, there's, more, the captain and the lieutenant colonel and all. They're up to no good, right? And how do they exploit these younger soldiers that are coming in, right? That are underneath them? How do they exploit them? Well, from our evidence, it looks like they bring in the likes of Leilani Hart. They bring in the likes of Leilani Hart to manipulate, to provide for inside the barracks. The likes of Leilani Hart, a convicted criminal that's up to no good, compromising even the CID, right? Compromising DES, compromising and trying to control Park University, trying to scare them into silence, manipulate them into silence, compromise them into silence, absolutely compromising them into silence. We've heard that over and over again from many, many, even some victims. And the barracks is then a target because you can't have these young soldiers doing your work, listening, being the guidon bearer, going into the arms room, going into, um, you know, seeing things on post and the training areas and everything where criminal activity and illicit activity is going on, and become a whistleblower. So, how do they minimize that? They have to silence our sons and daughters. And they do that by several different ways. They bring in the young girls to the barracks. We know that because Jake Jakovitz, the command sergeant major, told us. And we know because we got confirmation that Thomas Kane is the one that provided those young girls with the passes. And we know about the 14-year-old girl that was living in the barracks for 4 months. And that was not an isolated situation, a one off. It wasn't a one off, y'all. And we know because of soldiers telling us that they were airdropping the videos. And we know that Dallas Hart, Richard's platoon leader, had illicit videos. And we know that Richard had turned in illicit videos. So when you compromise with an illegal activity, illicit activity like bringing in these young girls into the barracks, and we know from Asia Graham that bad things happen. Bad things happen. Bad things happen to her. I can't even imagine. These are co-ed barracks. How stupid can you get? How stupid can you get to make co-ed barracks unless you want to compromise your soldiers, your service members, those that are in your care. You would never have co-ed barracks. It's the stupidest thing ever. Because you're talking about 17-year-olds to 25-year-olds full of vim and vigor in the barracks? No, that's stupid. You're setting up a very bad situation. And then you're bringing in the girls, these young girls, 14-year-old girls with cameras everywhere. And there you go. You can be compromised very easily, and you could be set up for blackmail. You could be silenced very easily, especially when they throw into the mix the drugs, the illegal drugs, and also legal drugs, and also the alcohol, and also the weapon smuggling for extra money. You know, they have to tweak exactly how much money. And soldiers are always looking for extra money. So there's lots of ways you can compromise our sons and daughters. And I will say right now that Richard's chain of command meant their soldiers harm because they were not following the SOPs for the barracks. There was illicit activities going on in the barracks. The barracks were flush with illegal weapons. We heard that from the general. There were drugs everywhere. We heard it from Boleyn. Boleyn was, just spewed out every kind of little drug. She knew. She was like, one of those cigar salesperson or cigarette ladies, cigarette girls. But she was like an encyclopedia for illegal drugs. And she just spit it out. And she was, 17. And she knew Fort Bliss, right? So, yeah. And they start very young. We know because of the 14-year-old girl. And we know that hundreds of thousands of children were trafficked through Fort Bliss, through the child camps. And it was terrible what was happening. It was absolutely terrible. But why isn't there more reports? Because there was so, so many ways to be compromised. And there were so many threats. So many threats. And Richard couldn't be compromised. And he stood up to what was going on. And we know that there was weapon smuggling. We know that the Hart family, um, we know that Dallas Hart was Richard's platoon leader. We know about the red security seal on the arms room door in the basement room where Richard resided. We know the absolute criminal history. Leilani Hart is a convicted criminal. The James Hart is a criminal. The Hart family. Um, so, you know, um, Leilani Hart is such a risk to national security. She's and to the security of Fort Bliss, to El Paso. It's not just Richard's case that she is a prime suspect in. And from her own words, and I posted up some information, and I've tried to post up her affidavit, but that got taken down. It is being, people are contacting us to have it. It is by request. I can give it to you. So if you want, just let me know. You can request Leilani Hart's affidavit. It's public. It's out there. Um, and also the October complaint. Um, yeah, I absolutely. I have gotten requests for those, and that's out there. If I post it, they block. I'm being shadow banned. I'm being blocked. I have to be very careful. So I did post the snippets that you see today that don't mention the illicit activities and the crimes and the threats just really, 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 it's really, really bad stuff. Um, or you could just trust that it's just really, really bad. But by request, I can give that to you. And that needs to get out. It needs to get out because it puts together this case, what Richard was reporting on, proof that that is what was happening. And when our sons and daughters are compromised into silence, that they also use the VA to do that. I think they use that very well with even officers using the VA, even like the director of emergency services. People that don't have too much of a health problem, but they want their disability benefits that were promised to them. I guess it was. So the disability benefits is huge because it's like over $5,000 a month if you get total disability. And, this is all about getting the open checkbook. It goes to the same spirit of Joe Spencer, right? I want the open checkbook. I want the money. I'm not going to do beg for nickels and dimes. I want the money. Show me the money, and then I will, whatever you want. If my client is a patsy, I won't mention it. I won't mention it. I will, feed Bob Moore, the narrative that you want me to feed. And of course, Bob Moore, he's such a disgraced journalist, using Leilani Hart, a convicted criminal, as the source to interfere with our son's case. So, of course, he's not going to report on the Walmart case properly, and he'll just go with the divisive, false narrative, right? Instead of protecting those that are, most vulnerable, like those that have severe mental health conditions, autism, that are special needs and that might have been exploited, those that have been exploited in those situations, um, sold out to carry out, trained, I mean, to do harm. And, instead of getting to the bottom of how dare they do that to a special needs person to train them to do harm, um, that they rather disseminate a false narrative, right? A false narrative. It's to divide. And so, you know, Leilani Hart, is a tool. She's an instrument, um, eh, to compromise our sons and daughters, to be a front, um, a front to money launder. I'm sure because she was getting her mail at the Dreams Cabaret. Um, and there's more with LLCs and stuff like that. And the whole thing with Lilani and the Royal Island dancers, that didn't always go too well. Okay, that didn't always go too well. So there is a lot of illegal and illicit activity that was used against our soldiers on our military base, so that you know um, corrupted individuals wearing our beautiful uniforms could get a piece of the $3 trillion. Yeah. And like I said, there's no better place to do it than on Fort Bliss, where you have access to fuel, you have access to equipment, you have access to transportation, you have access to tents, you have access to land, you have access to electricity and to water. I mean, those child camps are huge. Hundreds of thousands, of children, and all the cots and all of that, and then hiring out the guards for them. And, I mean, the arms room with all the weapons constantly coming in, the ammunition constantly coming in, the hand grenades, um, and on and on. Just for corrupt people to steal, and then to get a team member, a corrupted team member, a compromised team member, because once you're compromised, then you know the temptation to fall into the criminal world is harder to resist. And yeah, to get someone, like someone good with computers like Jonathan Embrace to, uh, you know, cook the books, the numbers and all of that. Um, so and then you get those that manipulate the media, like Danae Katzen, who is absolutely connected to KTSM. That's home for her. The building was home for her. Inside the building was home for her. There was no like, oh, where is this? There was no looking around. She absolutely knew where she was. She knew what office room to go into. She knew where the studio was. She felt very at home to sit right into that studio chair. Um, yeah, that was really. Uh, I mean, you if you're a first time person going there, you would have to be told what to do, where to go, where the bathroom was. But if you've been there often, you feel at home like she did. She never had to ask a question. So that was, of course, Angela Kacherga controlling the narrative. She is really up to no good. Of course, Bob Moore, he was um, giving his fake news. He was peddling. He's a peddler of fake news. He's a peddler of propaganda and fake news, and to other newspapers that are desperate for money. And of course, um, with this social media time that we have, the newspapers are really hurting. And so a piece of that 3 trillion sounds good to them too, I guess. I don't know. You'd have to ask them why they have decided to be recipients of Bob Moore's fake news and to further publish it, right? So, at the expense of our sons and daughters, okay, at the expense of hundreds of thousands of taken children, at the expense of so many people dying of overdoses, at the expense of our country, 100%. They absolutely have sold us out. And of course, they've teamed up with the corrupted, the compromised leadership. They've teamed up with the Mexican cartels. And the Sinaloa cartel could never have gotten as huge as it has in the United States without the help of this leadership. Okay. And this partnership that they have. So I hope you keep that. It's huge. It's been a very, very good day because we were watching the Congress, and they look so ridiculous, right? They look so ridiculous to me anyway. To me. They all have their own little agenda that they're doing because of whoever's funding them. That's clear. But Kash Patel was magnificent today. President Trump has been absolutely on this. He absolutely knows what's going on in El Paso. Um, the yeah, and Kash Patel is pretty important to all of this. Um, Pam Bondi, right? She's also there's so many, but we were really happy about the answers that Kash Patel gave because we're all about law enforcement, right? And defending the Constitution. And that's what he focused on. And the reaction to this helicopter plane crash by President Trump was very swift. I was on last night, doing the live stream, and I saw his reaction to it, and he was right on it. And of course, you're going to see really trying to cut funding, a lot of funding to what has been exploited and trafficked. Okay, those that have, $3 trillion is a lot of money. $3 trillion is a lot of exploitation because it's a lot of that comes from, we're wondering, how did we get into debt, $37 trillion in debt, right? What is it, 27, 37? Anyway, it's late. We're burning the midnight oil. But we're trillions and trillions in debt. Where did that money go? Not for our roads, not for our infrastructure, not for, the betterment of our country. It was exploited. It was exploited, the last years, right? When you're talking about trillions of dollars being part of trafficking, it was being exploited. And a lot of that money is coming from the federal funding. So it has been very clear that, from the beginning, we're like, what string did Richard pull on? Because these people are absolutely insane. They're lying to us. They're covering up. It was very clear to us that they were covering up that Richard was murdered. They were covering up his remains, still are, but we're getting more and more. They have now conceded and admitted that Richard was murdered in the line of duty. That means in uniform, on Fort Bliss. So they have done that. We have the receipts for that. But we want Richard's remains, and we want accountability. We want accountability. And this age is different because we do have a different president who is calling it out. And what do I mean by that? Because he relabeled the cartels, didn't he? To those terrible, up to no good groups that wreak havoc on families and loved ones. And, that is the hugest, the emergency at the border, the wanting to shut down a border. If you want trafficking, if you're into trafficking, you don't want to shut down a border. You'd make excuses. So, shutting down that border and relabeling is really, really important. And I think legally renaming Fort Liberty to Fort Bragg and Fort Cavazos to Fort Hood is very, very important when it comes to the perpetrators and the actions and everything. I'm sure it's very, very important. So, yeah, it's been a great day. We're getting a lot of feedback. That's why I'm come on so late, because we're getting a lot of feedback, because we are everywhere. Where they go, we go. If they go to the courts, we go to the courts. If they go to the agencies, we go to the agencies. And we are just submitting and filing every day. Every day. Today, I think maybe 7 documents were submitted again. Complaints, and really about Leilani Hart, and this whole thing with Leilani Hart couldn't do it by herself, right? She couldn't do it by herself. And so it is coming out more and more about her help, about her spies, about her method of operation, how she tries to manipulate, who she tries to manipulate with, who manipulates for her. Those things, it's all coming out. And, that's why we get the requests about her affidavit that was notarized. And yeah, so very good news. Please pray that we will very soon get Richard's remains. It's a tough one, because the reports are, and there nothing's changed in that he was dismembered. and it's not it's absolutely horror, and that the VA has been involved in this, and a funeral home has been involved in this. Of course, it's international on top of that. Um, so it is, but we're very close. We're very close, and we want to get his remains. Whatever remains we can get, we want his remains. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, and God bless you. And please be vigilant. And we have got to get law and order back onto our military installations. We have got to turn off the spigots of the tool or the instrument of compromise, and we need to strip those that have fallen for this and have done so much harm. We need to take their rank and their uniform off of them, because it's bad. So thank you so much. God bless you. And Leilani Hart needs to be arrested, no matter how you look at it. She has done felony crimes, y'all. Felony crimes. She's not above the law. She needs to be arrested. Thank you so much. God bless you. And I will be back tomorrow.